62.
62. Not saying anything else after that, right?
Right. Oh, we only say that we're not saying something else.
No, we're saying that. So we should just go back to saying the other.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
So we just got back from a trip.
Yeah, we had our fall break trip. This is end of October, I guess. This is end.
Yeah.
Towards the end of October. And we went to 2 of the Canary Islands out of the
Like
5 or 6.
5 or 6. There's several.
Yeah. But the two we went to are the 2 like primary most populated ones, I think.
I think so. Most popular to go to also.
Yeah. Popular. Well, no, but populated probably by the locals too.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So we went to the
Tenerife first.
Yeah.
And then Gran Canary.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're big. I mean, as far as islands go, I thought, I don't know what I thought, but what is it, like 11 times bigger than Aruba? Maybe Aruba's just small. I don't know.
Yeah. But you could drive it back. You could drive the whole island in a day.
Oh, yeah. And we did. But,
Yeah.
far point to far point of the island, hour and some change.
Yeah.
You take the highway. Or 2 or 3 if you go through the massive volcano in the middle of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and we could talk, obviously the podcast is it's not really a travel podcast, and it's
not so much
in its sense. So even though we're talking about the islands, we're not going to be talking about like, oh my gosh, here's the places you go. And here's all the Instagram shots you can take. It's beautiful though.
It is beautiful.
So if you're into photography, it's a place to go.
I think you worded it really well when you're talking about Tenerife, that it was like the playground to for like, was it you that said this is the playground? One of us said, we said it the same thing 2 different ways, that like when the earth was created, there's deserts and there's forests and there's tundras and there's beaches and there's whatever, the creator spent extra time on Tenerife, kind of making it a little playground of every possible little biome. And it's everything from just, beaches and sand and some sort of like deciduous forest, and there's pine, and there's like, mountain volcano peaks and fog, and
to some extent, like rainforest.
Rainforest. Yeah.
And then there's just like desolate Martian looking land.
Yeah. Very Martian looking lava fields and rock formations.
I meant to tweet this, but Annabelle said, wait, how did she word it? This is perfect. When we were driving through the Martian lands, she said, like Mars? It was about, how did she word it? It was about the Mars. She's like, this is what she said. She said, it looks like Mars, it feels like Mars, and I can't breathe on it like on Mars. Which I thought, right, she, as a 10, she has memory of how Mars looks and feels, right? Because you can say look by the pictures you might have seen from NASA's telescopes or the rovers, but you don't know how it feels. So she has the memory of how it feels. And so her like unedited, unaltered, response to the terrain was, it looks like Mars, it feels like Mars, and I can't breathe on it, which was hilarious. But I thought, oh my gosh, she remembers her life on Mars.
But I mean, I agree with that too.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say some parts of it are very Mars-like, except that there's air. I guess that Mars used to have air. But yeah, so we would say that, I would say that it was kind of like a playground.
Yeah.
Before expanding and establishing the whole of Earth.
Yeah, a little bit of everything on there.
Yeah. And like Gran Canary wasn't as diverse, although they did have the huge desert.
They did have, they had a massive sand dunes area.
Yeah. So energetically, obviously we were driven to it for some reason. And maybe we'll spend the podcast talking about the actual energy or why we were driven to it or what.
Yeah. I mean, I've always been been drawn to mountains and volcanoes in the first place. And while I'm not really an island guy, I liked Tenerife, at least, as an island. Like, I don't think I could live on island. Island life is I don't know, it's weird. Like, Aruba is a wonderful place to visit for a week, but I wouldn't want to live on it. That said, maybe it has to do with the size of the island. I don't know. Like, Ireland, I could live there. Iceland, I could live there. I could probably live in Tenerife too.
Yeah.
So maybe it is just if it's big. Puerto Rico, no.
Well, Puerto Rico is just energetically not a great island. So this island is, to some extent, and maybe I was slightly biased because you told me about this, but it's kind of overran by tourists a little bit. Some parts of it.
A lot of tourists.
And I think a lot of the tourists are driven there just because not only can you have like the beach experience and the resort experience, where there are a lot of beaches and resorts for vacationing purposes, but you can also have the, like the explore crazy lands experience, and you don't have to go far.
Yeah, 20-minute drive, and you're in a different world.
Yeah. So the part that I guess I didn't see coming, it was at the end when we were flying home. And I kind of tried to look at each trip, and maybe this is the wrong way to do it, of like, okay, what was the purpose? What was the lesson there? And we had to switch. I guess I'll say this. This is not the end, but in the middle, we switched islands. We flew from Tenerife to Gran Canaria. And when we left Nepal, this is speaking about our personal blindness, maybe. The Nepal airport, like, we got there so early that we ended up.
Oh my gosh. We
ended up just catching a flight that is like was right.
Yeah.
Like an hour and a half before. They're like, oh, hey, what was whatever the airline was that flies to between in Nepal between Kathmandu and Pokhara, just flies there every 20 minutes or so. And they're like, hey, do you want to jump on this one? And we ended up getting there earlier, which was great. But in this one, we're like, okay, well, we don't know how early to get to the airport. And so I have my personal blindness associated with worrying about being late.
I have that too. The anxiety about making sure we get to the airport, especially the airport, early.
Yeah, and I get triggered by you, and I think you get triggered by me. And then I think I completely lose it, and you completely lose it.
I think I'm a lot better than I used to be. I used to be a complete wreck.
Well, yeah, because it used to be just intolerable.
Yeah.
But I think we get each other going.
Yeah.
And the children, of course, are at the mercy of our idiocy.
At one point, I was like, what would be great is if we just get here, and then we go through the way I wore it, and I was not careful with my words here. It was like, we get to the airport, and we check in, and we get through security, and we get to the TSA, and we get and we get to the gate, and it's like 3 minutes, and we walk on the plane. That was my wish to the universe. And what I meant by that, and I should have been very clear, was we get to stay at home or the hotel or whatever and spend that extra buffer of time in leisure. And then you get to the hotel with, closer to the flight, and then speed through everything, and then get there 3 minutes, and then you walk on the plane. That is what I thought I meant. That is not what we got.
But that's just the flight home.
The flight home was not that. We'll get there in a second.
Yeah. No, but if the flight's in between, right? So
yeah,
we completely basically flipped out. Not like screaming, just overstressed ourselves.
Yeah. And part of it is that you don't know. This is a new airport in a new country, and everybody's like, "Oh, get there 2 hours early," and that's just the mindset.
Yeah, but it doesn't. It doesn't matter what the details are. It doesn't actually matter what the recommendation is. What I'm saying is that personal unawareness is how we handle the situation, and we handled it completely poorly. Once again,
the flight from Tenerife to Gran Canaria was very frantic getting there, and then we get there,
frantic because of our fault.
Yeah, completely. And we get there, and it's like, oh, there's oodles of time.
Yeah, it was at 9:00 at night. The airport is empty. We get there. It turns out an hour before. and we have plenty of time to spare. But that was not, but with us, we basically have exaggerated every single stress point of how late we need to get there in order to feel comfortable. So we kind of like not only ruined the evening for ourselves, but also for our children by stressing them out.
We're rushing through dinner.
Yeah, we rushed through dinner. We decided. So like at some point we decided basically in our mind that we were going to be late. And then we spent the entire time stressing that we were.
Yeah.
Which is what we tend to do all the time.
When we totally could have, even if we had spent the same amount of time, we could have enjoyed it much more.
Yeah, no, we were just completely overstressed ourselves.
Beside the fact that we could have actually spent more time at the restaurant or more time at the mountains or whatever. But that's not even the important part.
Yeah, no, it was a complete failure in acknowledgement of and even though I realized I'm like, okay, I'm overreacting, I'm overreacting, flipping out, but I would just kept getting sucked back into it.
Yeah.
It was very unpleasant. But it was very, I guess I was adamantly aware of all the points of failure that I was not able to control my emotional reaction.
Me too. I was like, I guess I've always been, I would rather be there early and sitting at the gate knowing, okay, well, I'm here, there's nothing else to worry about, than spend that same amount of time at home, which is obviously more comfortable, and then be going, well, what if we can't find parking? What if there's a big check-in line? What if there's a big security line? What if, we get there and then all of a sudden they move the gate across the airport? What if?
Yeah, but that's just you acknowledging that you live in fear and you would rather mitigate the fear with unnecessary getting there early than address how you actually feel.
Yeah.
Is that I would rather, or is I would rather I would address the fear that I have within me and acknowledge the fact that I just live in fear?
No, there's a lot of fear over missing flights.
No, but why would anybody ever go, oh, instead of this, I would much rather get there early and sit there an hour early? Because you're afraid.
Yeah.
But that's the point to address.
Right.
Now, there's nothing there to address other than the fact that you're afraid and you're designing the scenario. In fact, probably manifesting a bullshit travel experience.
Yeah. No, I mean, it feels safer, and it totally pacifies that for me.
Yeah. You feel unsafe, you're afraid, and then instead of acknowledging it and actually addressing it on a deep, deep level, you mitigate it and basically cancel out the feeling by not acknowledging what's actually behind it and getting to the airports 3 hours early and sitting there, whatever, and justifying it oh no, that is a recommended amount, blah, 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 blah. No, so yeah, I mean, I would think before we ever travel again on the airplane, both you and I independently spend some quality time acknowledging what is it that we're struggling with.
Yeah.
On a deep level.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember with me, running late was just always bigger than it needed to be.
Yeah.
Traveling and running late. And I think what I associated with is a feeling of being left behind. Mm-hmm. It's either I'm being left behind or somebody's being left behind. And so what I'm acknowledging within that is somehow the fear is not just, because being late to any one plane doesn't actually matter. It's deeper than that, right? And so the depth of it with me goes to being left behind.
That's interesting. My family was frequently late, or, if not late, there was this anxiety over being late.
What do you do with us?
Probably, yeah. There's, we need to get going. We need to get going type of stuff. And, or do we end up being late? Maybe a little bit, maybe not. Irrelevant if we're late.
But what did being late to them meant?
It was how it looked to everyone else. Which,
yeah, but we look like total idiots running through airports like morons.
Yeah.
Or how you are shaking whenever you're packing things up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you care by looking
yeah,
looking bad.
I don't think it's that. To me, it's the fear of missing out on it, missing the flight, and then what are we gonna have? Will there be another flight that has 4 seats? When are we gonna get there? Do we just lose a day of vacation? There's the cost benefit analysis in my mind is getting there early and sitting there is worth it to reduce the risk of missing the flight.
And then what? Well, you missed the flight, and then what?
And then what is the big unknown, and then what is, well, okay, you're
So you're afraid of the unknown?
Yeah, the next available flight is 2 days, in 2 days or something, and
But okay, but then if the larger fear is being afraid of the unknown, then what?
I don't know.
No, I mean, extrapolate that out. What happens when you're stuck in the unknown?
I mean, let's say there's no control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Control over what?
Control over the outcome of the trip.
Okay. But, if this is just control over what? Outcome of the trip means what?
I don't know. I mean, there's some expectation of how it should go.
There is? You have expectation of how it should go?
I try not to, but obviously there is. I mean, I expect to make the flight.
Yeah.
I expect to get there and for there to be a hotel room available. I expect for, is it a conscious expectation? Not exactly. It's just kind of like, well, if you booked a flight, you expect to make the flight.
Yeah. And so if the expectations are not being met, then what?
Then it's not going the way I want it to go, which I know to circle back to control.
Yeah. And so control it's important to control because
I don't know, because I want it to go, sir. I feel like I'm going in a circle here.
Yeah, no, you're going to have to open up deeper than that and actually feel where this is going and not go in the circle.
I don't know, because then I would miss out on what I wanted. That's where it feels like it's going, is that I don't want to miss out on, if we miss the flight and we get the hotel, we could probably get that refunded through Expedia. It's not even the money. It's that the scarcity there is time, right? We get so many days of fall break, and we weren't even using the whole thing, so we were not even 7, so we're down to 6. And if we were to miss a flight, we'd be down to maybe 5, and it's like,
Well, you're just trying to logic in of why it's reasonable to feel this way.
No,
but why missing out on life is what? You're missing out on life, meaning what?
And there's a sadness to it.
Yeah, why?
I just want to say because I missed out on life, but it's like this unmet potential of what it could be. But of course, what it could be is just this idea of what it is in my mind.
Well, yeah, but that's just you out of scarcity creating a situation and then wanting that situation to go a certain way. Control.
Yeah,
but it's control because you are. It's sad. You're trying to mitigate the missing out, and the missing out is, in the long run, is sad and painful because unmet potential of life of what? Like when does the potential unmet? Oh, I mean, if it's sad, right? That's something you can hook into.
Yeah, sad's close. Sad isn't the right word. It's like this, like, missed it type of thing, which it's different from sad. It's like really unfortunate. Really, like, I don't know. It's like there's a lot of the out of my control in there. That's like, it's like I almost had it and then lost it. We had this trip. Oh my gosh, everything. Okay, and then poof, it's gone. So it's like having something and then losing it almost. Even though, did you have it? Did you lose it? Those are all beside the point. It feels like I had something and I lost it. When we actually missed the flight to Rome that one time, right? It was like, we had it and then we lost it, which is worse than never having it in the first place in some weird psychological way.
Yeah, but if you're dying on your deathbed or you're dying, whatever, without a bed, and that's the feeling, where do you go from there? That's the note in which you end your life on.
Yeah, I mean, if you end your life on that, it feels like the life was unlived or something.
Yeah, but you have in the past, you have said that you have a huge problem with the reason why you get sad when people die, when children die, and then the parent get to experience the children loss is because it's that unmet potential.
Yeah.
It's that, oh, look what if everything that could have, should have been.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't so because the expectation wasn't met.
There is unmet potential in the idea of missing a flight. And at the same time, we've missed flights. We've whatever. I know it's never as bad as I think it's going to be. And it just turns it into a different type of adventure instead of the type of adventure that I was expecting.
Yeah, but
I know that.
Isn't adventure in any form of travel an adventure?
Right. It's an adventure in the airport or it's an adventure on the island. It's an adventure nonetheless.
Yeah, but having a set of expectations going into it, and then fearing that those expectations could be yanked away from you, it's coming from a deeper place. Right? It's bigger than a trip to Tenerife. And it's bigger than any one travel experience because we have a lot of those.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you are in it, the way you react to it is all consuming. It is all consuming. It's bigger than this one experience, right? The reason why you can't let go of it in the moment and you're literally shaking from it is because it's all consuming to you.
Yeah, it does. It does feel incredibly important in the moment.
Yeah, but what you should do is identify why. Right? I don't. Maybe we should put traveling on hold altogether until this is addressed.
Yeah, I think it is about missing out. It's about lose the missed potential or something of.
Is it trapped from your the Knights Templar life that you remembered or not?
I don't think so.
Where's it trapped from then? Like if you had to draw a story or a scenario where this was the end of life, how does it look like? You can just come up with a story.
Yeah, it feels like relevant. I died young.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know the details of that, but that's what it feels like.
And then what are you regretting? Not living the life or what?
Yeah. That I had, hopes and dreams that were unrealized. And it isn't even that they work out exactly the way that you think they're going to work out, because nothing ever does. It's more like that you didn't even have the opportunity to try. The opportunity to try was taken away. More than, right? And it, outside of your own control almost, which is, so if I can, exert more control and get there early or whatever, then that helps mitigate that feeling.
Yeah, but it's not about mitigating the feeling. It's addressing it at the root core of what's actually causing it. Because in the long run, right, is experience pleasant? Spending the rest of your life mitigating something?
Not really, no.
Right. Quite literally, the flow doesn't even happen because you're trying to control and mitigate something that you're manifesting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe work on letting that one go. Yeah, with me, I think it's like it comes down to being left behind. And, I guess some people have their memories associated with Atlantis that, they can go like, oh, okay, I can pinpoint to that. And then that's, it's an easier sell because like you, there's a scenario in which you're like, oh, okay, I remember this lifetime where I was left behind and the world was collapsing and then I wanted to make it out of the planet and I didn't, right? But that's maybe a podcast we should have. It's just associated with that.
Like, did that happen in your childhood here? Left behind?
My childhood where?
Here?
Oh no, I don't. Mine is being left behind from somewhere else. But it's that same feeling of being left behind. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. With there's this generalized unsafety, I think, that I just battle with. That kind of triggers.
Yeah.
And of course, yes, I know I get triggered whenever you react the way you react, because it's extremely triggering to me. Because you reacting the way you're reacting actually amplifies my feeling of unsafety on top of that.
Yeah. It's weird because it's like sometimes I overreact when there's no actual need to, time-wise. And sometimes I feel like I underreact's the wrong word, but react appropriately, even though there may be more of a time pressure. It's weird, and I don't know why. When we were in the giant line leaving Tenerife for the end, I guess we had a lot of time, but I at no point was I like actually concerned that we're gonna miss the flight.
Yeah, but because you were not being spiked from elsewhere. You were actually addressed, right? Like, the point of awareness of any one scenario is to address the situation based on the current set of circumstances, right? What awareness is you look at the situation and you go, oh, wait, look, I have an hour and a half before the flight. That's plenty. And even with worst case scenario, we miss it. Okay, so guess what? We spend a night here and we get there in the morning. You can look at all of that and be able to just even logically go, yeah, there's no need for me to stress out. And so you can just honestly look at the current situation only with the circumstances that are applied to the current outcome, and then be able to rationally allow yourself to relax.
You know what the difference might be? Is that going there, I'm more nervous because I don't want to miss it. But coming home, oh no, we have another day on vacation? Drats. That's not so bad. So I'm not missing anything if we're delayed coming home, but I am missing something if we're delayed going there.
So I have a fear of missing out.
Yeah. So I don't think I'm quite as, it's missing a flight coming home is much, much less bad than missing a flight going on a vacation.
Yeah, but that's just your justification of
I just now realized that. And so that wasn't like an active thought back then. As we're standing in line, I'm like, I had no fear we're actually going to miss it, but it wasn't end of the world if we're going to miss it. Whereas, we're sitting in that restaurant and it's just like, we gotta get going. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There needs to be awareness. Yeah. If you even take your time, right? If you were spending that time calculating how much time we actually need, and you're like, oh, look, an hour and a half, that's probably plenty. And you say that to yourself.
We did the calculation and then we met the calculation, but as we're sitting there, we're like,
yeah,
what's going on? We gotta go.
Yeah. But if you did the calculation and you go, okay, that there's no reason, but you're still being dragged back into the worry.
Yeah.
Then you have to see that this is beyond this.
Yeah. No, that's exactly how it was. Because it was like, we did the math. We have plenty of time. Look at the clock. We have plenty of time. Everything's fine. And yet, panic is setting in. To tie it back. So coming back, we went from Gran Canaria back to Tenerife because our main flight was out of Tenerife back to Newark. And so we got to, someone had said, oh no, you got to get to the Gran Canaria airport 2 hours in advance, and it's an hour drive from here, and you got to get gas and everything. So we left fairly early, 3 hours in advance.
Too early.
But we get there, and they're like, oh, you want to be on the early flight? Just like in Nepal. We're like, sure. So we get on the early flight, and we land in Tenerife. So early that the gate is not open to check in for our big, long flight. And okay, well, nothing to do. We sort of sit there and try to sleep in the chair for an hour plus. And finally, the gate opens. We check in. We make it through security 1. Everything's fine. We still have oodles of time. And we're walking toward our gate. And we finally realize that this giant line that we're walking by is the line for passport control to get out of the EU, basically. It's also full of British people because after Brexit, they're no longer in the EU. So that's neither here nor there.
You find that very amusing.
I find that very amusing that, yes, I do.
Well, to that extent, like that line wouldn't have been that long for us if it wasn't full of British people.
That's true. If it was just EU, because like there was this dedicated line to fly to the rest of Europe, the line was non-existent. You could just walk up and be done with it. But not for Britons and not for us. This was a pretty long line. Well, that's fine because we at this point we still had like 2 hours. So we get in the line, and it's just a mess because they only have like 2, maybe 3 immigration people there, and it's just really, really, really slow. We finally get through it, and sure enough, we get to the gate, and then 3 minutes later, we walk onto the plane. So I got what I wanted, but in some sort of evil genie style way. What it is not. I got what I asked for, but not what I wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, do you believe that there's such thing as a evil genie?
No. It's. I got it for a lesson, and then the thing happened on the plane, and we end up being we land back in Newark an hour or so later than we were supposed to, and when you're international, you gotta get off the plane, you gotta go get your bags, you gotta recheck your bags, you gotta go through immigration, your passport control, whatever, and then you gotta go through security again, and then TSA again, and then you gotta take the little monorail to your gate, and we get there, and then 3 minutes later we walk on the already boarding plane again.
Yeah,
and I'm like, look at this. This is exactly what I asked for.
Yeah.
And at this point, I'm like, thank you, universe, for giving me what I asked for. I think I'm good now. I don't need that anymore.
Yeah. For the most part, I think like we don't go out much other than traveling. So the opportunity on the vacation presents ourselves with like a huge influx of like, oh my gosh, look how I actually am with the world and all the things I need to work on.
Uh-huh.
And maybe possibly because it places you in a different space to where all the things that you don't think are still your thing, very obviously
still your thing,
exist there. And like you used to be a very, very uncomfortable person to travel with. Like it just used to be, you were shaky, you were angry, but this was before any like awareness work that we did.
Mm-hmm.
And even before we started this work, we're like, you're going to have to, because you used to yell at children too. That was your, like to me, it was just like, at the time I was just embarrassed because he used to yell. But because of this, because the stress point was coming out in this way. That instead of, because somebody else was at fault, that this is why you feel that way. So you're not there, but then you still feel that way. Yeah. And of course, our son is great at not letting our bullshit affect him, or at least perception wise. And of course, Annabelle gets dragged into your bullshit right away. And so she gets triggered by you a lot quicker than I get triggered by you. And so then she starts attacking you because your energy is very unpleasant. Which is, puts us into an interesting dynamic because like, you still have things to work out with her about how you interact with her. And then, how you feel about disrespect and not being loved and not being seen or heard, or, your authority not being met or whatever. And then, she has things to work out with you about, you triggering her all the time because she's not good at setting her personal energy boundaries. And that's where I fail too, is I don't set my personal energy boundaries because I'm already triggered about the whole unsafety of being left behind. And then you going through your thing, like adds on to that trigger. Similarly to our trip to Athens with the Cayenne, Porsche Cayenne, right? Yeah. Like that unsafety.
Lucky day.
Yeah. But think about it, like anytime we travel, there's this influx of like, oh, look, here's everything that's still there.
Everything's heightened. Yeah.
Yeah. Because with me, going outside of the comfort zone, outside of the house, within itself adds in this like point of awareness of like, oh wait, I'm like on the alert for unsafety. And that just might be the nature of my personal trauma, but also, related to like, okay, well, I got to keep the kids safe. There's like, I can pile on all kinds of excuses of why I feel unsafe. But in the long run, the safety gets triggered very quickly. Yeah. And then, so then if you're triggered, then everything gets dragged into it to the point where it's almost like impossible to let go. Because then everything looks unsafe, right? To that, to a hammer, everything looks like a nail to that situation. Yeah, it's like that. If you're just blind to even the initial influx of a trigger, then everything is triggering. Yeah. So that's, I guess, the first half. Like that's the first half that came up, I guess, for me. I don't know if the second half anything came up for you or if it was all me.
It was emotional. It was weirdly emotional. Because I'm like, I guess we can explain what happened.
Yeah. I guess we'll start with an explanation and then maybe see what flows out.
So we're on the flight from Tenerife to Newark, and it's like a 7-hour flight back. What is it? 7? No, 7 there, 8 back. Yeah.
No, it was 6 there,
7 back,
and 7 back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because of the headwind. And there's not much as far as places to land between Tenerife, which is just off the coast of Africa, and Newark, New Jersey. Should a medical emergency happen, which happened on the seat in front of me. There was a fellow there who, I guess, luckily there were at least 3 doctors on board, I guess.
Well, it was an anesthesiologist, a generalized MD, and that, I don't know
the Spanish guy was
the Spanish, a general MD.
Okay.
And the other one,
there was a nurse. Oh, she was training to be a nurse who sat next to him.
Yeah.
And then
the other one, but she didn't really participate.
She didn't help, but that was the other doctor's wife.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, better than zero. They weren't sure if he was having a heart attack or not. That was the fear, was that this man is having a heart attack in the seat in front of me. And I don't know, but he didn't look like he was in a good shape. And, we're in the middle where it's literally like 3.5 hours in when this is happening. And it's like, there's nowhere to go. In the end, they ended up diverting the plane to Halifax, Canada, because that is the first place to land when you're coming in from Europe. And the paramedics there were like, yeah, this happens all the time because this is the first place to land.
The paramedics at Halifax.
Yeah, the paramedics
who were accepting us, saying that, they're the first airport. And so if there is a medical emergency across
where they land.
The Atlantic, you go to Halifax.
But the fellow who had the issue happened to speak Russian. And I'm like, I'm listening to it. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's Russian. And you're sitting right behind me, what looked like meditating.
I was meditating.
But maybe you were asleep. I don't know.
Well, I was, to begin with, so to say this, so the world of spirit, right before the trip, I finished a book that was important for me to read, like on that, like spiked up a lot of memories. And then right before we leave, the world of spirit like pipes in a different book for me, which was totally outside of my regular repertoire of selections. And it's a meditation book, which I would highly recommend. Maybe you can put it in a note. It's an older meditation book, and I think it's based on an app, and I think maybe it is a fab or used to be a fab. I don't know. But the book is actually really good. And, we've been meditating for years, and I thought, okay, this is a very, did you continue reading it?
I haven't started it.
Oh, you haven't started. Okay. It's not rocket science, but he's just really good at just giving you just enough information to kind of give you a gist of what meditation is. And of course, what I do is I tune into somebody's energy and I just copy it and then I have it. You know what I mean? So to me, it was like, oh, look, I just literally copied the energy. And so I was just flying high on this whole book. And I'm like, oh, I'm just going to read it. And so throughout the book, there's these exercises that are meditation exercises. He's like, he gives you a little passage, he gives you little descriptions, and then he gives you like a little practice meditation to do. And they're all introductory level meditations, but of course with me, I go elsewhere. And so I'm sitting there meditating, and then I go into like the deepest trance, really.
On the plane?
To the point where, like, I think I fall asleep, but there's this part of me that is. Have you ever been in that type of meditation where, like, you're actually asleep and your body is completely comatose, but there's this
awareness?
Yeah. But at the same time, I know I'm asleep. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was and like to the point where I was so deep that I couldn't even stay awake. I was just in whatever it was a really transcendental experience. Why this individual is having a heart attack. And so part of me like figured out that something was wrong because like there were words that piped in, but because I was in this trance state of being, I had no clue that. I'm assuming this was going on for a long time before
I was trying to sleep, but like I kept, plane sleep's never great. And I kept, waking up because there was a lot of rustling going on in front of me. And I think it was just him trying to get comfortable.
Oh, so this is before everybody got alerted to it.
Yeah. So he was just anxious and moving around and moved his seat up and back and moving around. And, that's not necessarily uncommon on a plane. No one's comfortable. Maybe the people in the front are, but we're not. And so, okay, it's just I'm just aware of it. It's not even a big deal. I'm just aware that this guy is really fidgety right now, and maybe a little bit sweaty too. And I'm like, well, but it's a plane. And there's some sort of interesting dynamic between him and his partner too that I was half trying to figure out, half trying to sleep. But as it went on, the flight attendants came and were trying to, "Are you okay, sir?" type of thing, and no, he's not okay, and he said he was having trouble breathing, and I don't know what it is, but
well, no, so yeah, at some point they have him on oxygen. With a tank, like an oxygen tank.
They do give him an oxygen tank.
And then they're constantly taking his blood pressure.
Well, yeah, the nurse was sitting next to his wife, I guess. She's training to be a nurse, but she has enough experience to be able to take blood pressure and do all these things and make general recommendations. And his blood pressure was quite high. His heart rate was a little elevated, but anytime you're nervous, everyone's heart rate's probably elevated on an airplane. Yeah, so it was like blood pressure's quite high.
Yeah, but then it turns out, that he's diabetic and he didn't take his medicine that morning.
And from what I heard, it was checked, which may or may not have happened. But yeah,
yeah. To begin with, they thought it was checked.
Yeah. Pro tip: never check your medicine.
I don't know.
There's two types of luggage. There's carry-on luggage and there's lost luggage.
I don't think that's the case. We have never lost luggage.
Yeah, it has always, even if we didn't come with us, it always arrived later.
Yeah.
But medicine, I would not check medicine, and I would not check anything expensive.
Yeah. So I guess to extrapolate on the story, when I wake up because energetically, I literally get hit with an influx of panic.
By the time I realized that this is actually looks like a very serious situation, I turned around to see if you were with it or not, and you were meditating, and I'm like, oh, okay, she's got this under control. She's doing her work from 2 seats away. And I just assumed that you were...
Did I have blankets over my head or not?
No.
Oh.
No, you were just sitting there like this. And
okay.
Okay, she is sending him whatever he needs, and she is aware of what's going on.
Yeah. So if I didn't have blankets over my head at that point, then yes, I was already in that zone. So it means I already woke up, but I got woken up by a huge jolt of panic. Like I think like they woke me up. They like pushed me out of the trance, and all of a sudden I get jolted out into like
were the
a
doctors
situation.
were the doctors there when you?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was the nurse was there, or at least was yelling from the seat over, and then the flight attendants were there. That's when I get jolted awake.
Okay, that wasn't. I mean, I guess I was maybe 10 or 15 minutes before that, because it was a slow progression to that, and then it was a quick progression to. Eventually, they're like, they did it. Are there any doctors on board?
Yeah. No. So
Just
when
like in the movies,
when I get piped into it, the doctors are not involved yet, and so I get jolted into it, right? And I'm like, oh, why? There's a situation, and so immediately I activate my Reiki symbols, and I'm like, okay, I'm changing the situation, like. Honestly, because usually I would hesitate to change the situation, right? Because I'm like, wait, do I have a space to be here? But I'm like, no, I literally leave the trance, and the first thing I get woken up with is some sort of, they're trying not to panic, but the underlying energy is panic,
right? Which is not helping him, because if it is a heart attack, if it is a panic attack, no matter what it is. Freaking out about it doesn't help. Yeah.
And so he's actually being driven further into the panic by the panicking, non-panicking, panicking, everybody around.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
At one point, there's two doctors. There's a Spanish doctor who only speaks Spanish, who had, I thought, a really good energy about him.
Yes, he's very calm.
He's very calm. He's very professional. Has a great bedside manner. Doesn't speak English.
But the bedside manner is great.
But he, if I had to pick a doctor, it's him.
Yeah.
And then there's the other guy
who does not have bedside manner.
Super, super nervous. And he very quickly went to, is there any way we can divert the plane? And, I can't say for sure, but I think he might be having a heart attack, which I think the guy overheard. And the guy was probably worried that he's, and I'm like, that guy didn't need to hear that, because that's just going to make it worse.
Well, yeah, his bedside manner was absolutely terrible. I mean, I don't know if this is going to get around to him, but it doesn't matter. But he's nervous, and he feels like the pressure's on him, and he's young. He's probably, he's obviously graduated and is doing medicine, but as an anesthesiologist.
Yeah.
But he, I think at some point you feel like if you are the doctor on the plane, and in his case, only English speaking doctor, and here's a patient who's dying, you feel like this is your responsibility. So what he doesn't want is to have that on his shoulders. And then so he feels like he needs to perform.
Yeah. And if you can divert the plane, then it's not his problem anymore. If the plane touches down and they can wheel him off alive, check, I have done my job as a doctor.
Yeah. So I know that that is a little sinister. Yeah. But yeah. So he's just the way he's handling the situation did not make things better. And so I get woken up because I realized that the whole thing is just going out of control. When on surface, everyone's trying to pretend like they're super calm. Like the energy is total chaos, that was really interesting to me, is to realize like, oh my gosh, everyone's flipping out, but they're trying not to flip out. But the energy is just
there's a specific frequency of flipping out, but trying not to flip out.
Yeah.
There's a very distinct flavor of that.
Yeah.
And the whole back of because we were, 3 seats from the back of the plane, the whole back of the plane is in that.
Yeah.
Honestly, when he ended up moving to the back seat and I guess laying down or whatever, I don't know. It was like, I don't know how much of it was out of sight, out of mind, but it really calmed our area down.
Yeah. Well, because the guy next to him was losing it.
Oh, the other Spanish, the passenger, Spanish passenger?
Yeah, he was completely losing it. The nurse was losing it.
He really had to pee really bad.
Oh, yeah.
And then eventually the doctors had walked away and he's like, I'm really sorry, sir, but can I just step over you because I've really got to go.
Is this after I sat next to him or before?
No, before you sat next to him. So he had to be like, the aisle is full of, 2 doctors and a nurse and 2 flight attendants all right here. And then there's the empty seat. And then there's the Spanish guy who was holding his pee the entire time.
Well, I think it was nerves. He was losing it.
Well, he thinks the guy's literally going to die sitting next to me.
Yeah. Well, so maybe we'll go into my energetic interpretation of this whole thing. So obviously, here, this is the biggest lesson, I guess, that I learned out of it, is because, right, one, I'm an intuitive. Two, I do energy work. And then I have this very big disconnect between me being able to do something versus like, well, fuck, here's medical professionals and they're doing something. Do you know what I mean? And so there's this, that is the line I struggled with, obviously.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you were almost like, is there a sign that I should go in? And then I'm like, I think they speak Russian. And you're like, well, there's the sign.
Yeah. Well, no, to begin with, I'm like, okay, I understand. Distance doesn't matter. I'm 2 seats away from him, so it doesn't matter. And so, energetically, to begin with, when I first tuned into him, I'm like, oh, okay, he's right there at the exit point, and he has an energetic team next to him that is basically allowing him to exit. Like he could exit right now, right? By exit, I mean die, or basically he could restructure his physicality. Like I'm getting all of this right from the beginning. Like when I first started like assessing the situation, this is what I'm getting. I'm like, oh, he is at the exit point and he's basically making a decision right now. And so the only thing that I could do at the time was basically to be there with him through that decision. But he was being persuaded to stay. Like he was basically, I don't know if he was in the White Tunnel or whatever, wherever he was, he's being persuaded to stay because he needs to do something very different than he has been doing on this planet. In that exit, like he's in that space, whether through like at the brink of death or you're kind of in that subdued state where you have that decision to make. You know what I mean? And he's in that subdued state. So his blood pressure got him to the point of, or he's just like semi unconscious, or he's in two spaces at the same time. He's suffering in his physical form, but he's suffering his physical form so much, and his blood pressure is so high that he's also piped over to his etheric form, and he's making all kinds of decisions there, right? And so I'm just there by his side, and he's making this exit decision. And so then what I'm being told by his higher guidance is like, yeah, just be there for him and help him make this decision. And if you're there in the physical form together with him while he's in etheric form, he will feel that there is this connection to the earth, and then he'll be able to earth in better when he's trying to leave the physical plane. And so that's what I'm doing, 2 seats away. I'm like, oh, okay, everything is fine. He's making his decision. It doesn't matter. In the long run, I'm like, it doesn't matter what decision he makes, but they really want him to make stay on Earth decision. Yeah. And so but I'm like, okay, but at the same time, I can change the energy of panic and I can override that. And then I can, at the same time, just assist him in this transition. So then the panic is not affecting his decision, right? Because I thought, okay, if everything is too much of a panic and he's in some sort of physical form, it's uncomfortable to him, I can ease his physical discomfort while he's over there in his in his etheric form. So that's where I was, right? But then I'm like, so then I'm sitting there and I think everything is fine. I actually do think everything is fine, and I think he thinks everything is fine. But I'm like, oh, but I could really ease his discomfort in the physical form better if I sat next to him. And so then this is the thing that I struggle with, is that I noticed myself not feeling like I should or could because he's surrounded by medical professionals. And I'm like, okay, he has 2 professional medical doctors,
2 MDs,
a nurse, flight attendants, 3 flight attendants coming back and forth. And the flight attendants are on the phone with a medical team on the ground.
Yeah. And they're they're checking the blood pressure. They end up giving him, I don't know, I think is it aspirin that helps with heart attacks? And then they give him 3 doses of nitroglycerin 5 minutes apart. which
that happened already when I was sitting next to him.
Yeah.
So they were not doing any of that until I sat next to him.
I think that the goal was to get the blood pressure down for the nitroglycerin. I think. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And so theoretically, I'm like, okay, everything is fine. This is going to work out. But then I pipe into the physical form. And I'm like, yes, but he's experiencing physical discomfort that I know I can ease. And I felt like I could ease the physical discomfort better if I sat next to him.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, I wish I could just sit next to him. But I'm like, oh, yeah. And so, yeah, I'm in that pass of like, okay, do I have the right? Do I not have the right? So, yeah, I'm kind of seeking permission. But of course, I'm always hesitant. And in this case, like, not because I care what other people think. Maybe to some extent, I'm like, do I care what other people think? And it's not that I care what other people think, but this is my first time realization that I think I can help better than the medical professionals. And I have a hard time making that call. Like I have a hard time not believing that, but like overriding this stigma that is associated with an energy healer versus a medical healer. But I'm like, it's interesting because there's this big evaluation point. I'm like, okay, well, the medical team can only do so much. Like the doctors are literally saying like, we have no medicine.
No diagnostic tool,
no equipment. The best we can do is take his blood pressure, read his pulse. The guy has the stethoscope that he keeps on, listening to him with, and they have oxygen that the guy is refusing to have because it's actually he's already having a hard time breathing, and the oxygen mask is is limiting his breathing.
Yeah, and air out of a tank is cold, and he's cold.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that part, right? And so I'm sitting there and I'm still trying to figure out if this is something that I was, that is a lesson for me there. It is like, what is the hesitation? Like, what is the hesitation to help? Like, does it actually matter that there's physical doctors there, right? That physical doctor being there as an MD does not negate the fact that you can do something different that they can.
Yeah.
And then, and I'm all pro like integrative medicine and intuitive medicine where energy healers can assist MDs with their skills. Like, we have watched plenty of shows where those
medical intuitive is like, hey, you should really take a look at this guy's spleen.
Yeah.
Which is, I guess, not an obvious thing that there's something wrong with your spleen based on whatever symptoms. And then it turns out, the spleen's about to explode or something. I don't know.
Yeah. No. And so like, to me, this was my first experience in the physical form of me having to put myself forward as a energy healer and an intuitive and mix myself up with MDs.
Yeah.
Like,
I hope you took away from this a very reassuring, reinforcing thing based on how it went and then, the follow-up at the end.
Yeah. No, but
just personally.
Personal experience.
For you, I hope you took away from this going, yeah, you were right. You were right the whole time. That you were right, they were wrong.
Well,
not that they were wrong, but they didn't want to listen to you.
Yeah, and I guess I'll tell how the story went, and then I'll tell them what my personal struggles still are or were. Yeah. So I'm sitting there, I'm struggling. Do I interfere with MDs? Do I because it feels like I'm imposing myself on the situation that.
Yeah. Fewer people involved is better than more people involved in a situation like this.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, but he literally has an empty seat next to him. And I'm like, I could go there.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, okay, well, if the people are, I don't know what the people, right? Because to walk up to a random human being or their family who thinks they're dying and to say, hey, I'm an energy healer. Do you mind if I also pipe in as the two MDs and the crew on the ground? Because we are flying United. So United's goal is not to have a lawsuit on their hands of mishandling the situation.
Right.
So they're trying to address it with their MDs on the ground in order to prevent a lawsuit.
The Spanish doctor, at one point, he just produces one of those little blister packs of pills out of his pocket And he's like, this is my personal medicine.
Yeah.
I would like to give this to him because I think I don't know what it was.
It was the nitroglycerin. That's what it was.
Was it?
Or diabetic medicine. It was the diabetic medicine.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. And
and they're like, oh no, you can't give him medicine that he is not prescribed, that he doesn't have a prescription for. And the Spanish doctor's like, I think it would help, but okay. He was so cool and chill.
No, he's cool and chill, but he's realizing the United Airlines is facing a lawsuit.
Right.
The two doctors have responsibility to help the best way they can, but at the same time, they're realizing this is a weird situation to where their hands are tied on help because United is afraid of a lawsuit.
Yeah, because United is like, what if Spanish doctor gives him, who knows what this pill is? The doctor says it's whatever it is. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah.
Either way, it's not, patient's medicine. And something bad happens. And, maybe it's because of this pill. Ta-da. Huge lawsuit against United for letting this doctor give him medicine. Huge lawsuit against the doctor,
da. But the energy of panic that is there is all of that.
Yeah.
Is United's responsibility of trying to avoid a lawsuit is in there.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, but I can ease. So where I end is I can ease his pain and I can ease his discomfort in the physical form. I can't do it from the 2 seats away, but I could really do it if I get next to him. Like that was my ideal situation, is to touch him. And so I'm sitting there and I don't know how much time I spent struggling. And then something pipes in to where I hear her speak Russian. And I'm like, wait, there's no way I just heard Russian. Like,
yeah, you asked me.
Zero
and I'm
way.
like, I think it's Russian.
And so, and I'm trying to look at her. And I'm like, does she look Russian? Does she not
does
look
not
Russian?
look Russian. She did not.
Well, because they're Ukrainian.
She didn't even look Ukrainian to me.
Well, anyway, so long story short, it turns out they're Ukrainian. And I'm like, okay, if the spirit world
plopped a Ukrainian guy 2 seats ahead of you with an empty seat next to him.
Right. And here I am energetically struggling to overcome my my physical form, basically interfering into a medical situation / a lawsuit for United situation. I'm like, there's not a better,
here's your recipe. Complete.
All the signs are basically pointing to go.
All
right?
signs point to yes.
Yeah. Right. And so I'm like, okay, this is my green light. Like I'm overcoming myself because the Ukrainianism of them and me, it was like, if they were not Ukrainian and I wasn't Ukrainian, I don't think I would have still sat there struggling to interfere. But yeah, the universe obviously places everything together. And so I walk up to her. I'm like, do you speak Russian? She's like, yes, I speak Russian. I'm like, where are you from? She's like, Ukraine. I'm like, okay, I'm from Ukraine. And I'm like, in Russian, I say, I'm an energy healer. Do you mind if I sit next to him and help him? And so, of course, Ukrainians.
Her eyes light up at that? Yeah.
And so, because she's trying not to panic as well. But of course, she's angry at the same time. So there's this dynamic there. And I realized, so Ukrainians just on the baseline are very open to energy healing. Like that is just, right? Like I don't have to sell somebody who's Ukrainian on energy healing. Like just by mere nature of you being Ukrainian, I know you are. And so she's like, yes. And then she's like, please. And so she's like, yes, please go there. And then she tells him, please trust her because she's Ukrainian. Right? She tells him that. And so he's in his comatose state of whatever. And so I climb over and sit next to the oxygen tank and I basically start healing him energetically. And, and so everybody, of course, is like,
who the hell's this lady?
What the fuck is just happening? But I think they don't care because in the long run, they think I'm Ukrainian and I'm speaking in a foreign language. So everybody's already confused.
Maybe you're a relative. Who knows?
Maybe all of a sudden, right? I decided to participate in this situation. So anyway, yeah. So to begin with, I guess I work on it. So he's on the top of having his, it turned out to be, wasn't a heart attack. But it was basically whatever the diabetic's insulin spike is.
Wait, was insulin too high or too low? I don't remember. One or the other.
But yeah, so he texted me the diagnosis.
But you looked it up and it's like, yeah, this could turn fatal.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
it's one of those things that needs to be taken care of sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I knew it wasn't a heart attack. The doctor who was not a doctor thought it was a heart attack, and I guess he was playing on the safe side. And he's saying, I am cautioning on the safe side of us landing in Halifax. I knew it wouldn't matter, but yeah, the guy's eased out of discomfort, let's say 30 minutes earlier than if we were to make it to New York. But no, so intuitively, then what I realized is like, okay, he's having, on top of everything he's having, he's panicking because he's wanting to die, but at the same time is too afraid to die. And he's on the clasp of his exit point, and he's struggling with what it means to be in the physical discomfort, but at the same time choosing his exit point. And then what I see is whatever the artery that goes, I don't know, is there an artery? I don't know what it is, but whatever goes through here is causing him pressure to his head, and then he's feeling dizzy, and he's basically at a constant point of pass out based on his blood pressure. And so they're having a hard time actually even hearing what he's saying. And he's saying that he just feels shortness of breath, really, really cold, and just generalized stomach pain. But what I'm seeing intuitively is whatever this is right here is causing him severe discomfort on his physical. That is what's actually causing the discomfort. And so I tell this to this person, and he's like, is that what he's? I'm like, no, that is what I'm telling you. And so he obviously doesn't understand what that means, because here's this random person who's.
Yeah, you were very adamant. You're like, no, I'm telling you this. I'm telling you this, and this is true, or something like that. Yeah,
because he's just not wanting to listen to me.
Yeah.
And so then the other thing that I get is he needs cranberry juice.
Yeah.
But not in its purest form. But of course, in the meanwhile, I'm asking if there's cranberry juice. Now, I don't know why. At the time, if he's having a heart attack, nobody wants to give him cranberry juice. But then later, of course, I Google it, and it says the cranberry juice would lower his insulin levels or whatever.
Do whatever it is in the right way.
Yeah, in the right way. And it is something that you would be able to take in order to reduce, I guess, the blood sugar. That's what it is. It's reducing the blood sugar.
Yeah, which sounds like, maybe real cranberry juice as opposed to like
sugar cranberry juice.
Sugar cranberry juice.
Yeah. But that was what I got is, do we have cranberry juice? Like, does the
airline have some?
And what kind it is? We could have at least looked up, but nobody listened to me, of course, on that. But yeah, so intuitively, I guess I got what I got.
Yeah,
it was actually in line with.
But you were vindicated in the end when we looked that up. No, I mean, don't downplay this. I mean, because in the end, it was like, oh, here you are on the plane, and you're like, cranberry juice is the thing, and it's like, oh. Well, in the end, you looked up. He told you what he was diagnosed with. We looked that up, and you looked up cranberry juice, and it's like, yes, this actually would have done a good deal to help with the situation.
Yeah,
which
I know.
I hope feels that would feel good to know. It's like, yes, turns out this works.
Well, no, I knew it works. The struggle, I guess, that I faced then and is now is, in this situation, this was a clusterfuck of a situation to where the medical doctors don't know. They're just reading the symptoms, and the symptoms are he's having a heart attack. How do we treat that? And they're doing their best based on the diagnosis that they think it is. And they're just not listening to me, who's an intuitive, who's saying something different.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And in fact, they're just completely even ignoring the fact that I'm there and are just treating it as a nuisance. And, Unite is trying to not be sued.
Yeah. It's interesting that when we were at the airport, I'm trying to remember when, if it was before the big line or after the big line. I saw him and he stood out.
Oh, really? I did not see them at all.
I saw him.
In our line?
It was in the airport. I'm trying to remember when. And I don't even know what it was about him that stood out. But I only saw him from the back. Because I didn't even see his face until he moved to go to the back. I did not see his face the entire time. But yeah, in as much as I couldn't tell you a single thing about a single other passenger, but I remember seeing him beforehand and it stood out in some way. And here I sit behind him.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I did not see them at all. Obviously, I was in my flying high zone with my meditations. And then, of course, it turns out, I think if I wasn't doing that meditation and then they yank me out of it, I don't know. It's almost like when I went into meditation, I went into that trance state and they yanked me out of it. I was already like primed for it. Do you know what I mean? Like there was...
Yeah, it worked out perfect.
Yeah, to where there was not even a thought of like, wait, there's no way I would not engage. And so I engaged from the distance. And then at that point, I was guided to engage from the physical standpoint. But then I was obviously struggling with it from the ego fear-based standpoint of how it would be received. And so, yeah, the whole thing for me was kind of like this, I don't know, maybe like a test of
trusting yourself?
Trusting myself, but then it's not that I don't trust myself. I trust myself. It's interfering into the medical profession and everybody else, right? Like, I have this thing of like, who am I to whatever? That's not a trust. That's more of like a
confidence.
Confidence. No, not the confidence of not being able to do it. It's the confidence of like, who am I
to override
MDs, right? Or to override the airline in this case. And so there was this, to me, it was this like this gameplay realizing, that United can be doing whatever the heck they're doing in order to mitigate their lawsuits. The MDs could be doing whatever the heck they're doing with the best knowledge they have. And then I could be doing with whatever the intuitive knowledge that I have. Do you know what I mean? So it's almost like there were three gameplays coming in at him while he was having his own issues of trying to decide whether or not he stays on this earth or exits out. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so it was a very, right, like if I had to take the trip apart, it was like, okay, well, one clusterfuck of shit as far as like traveling and being relaxed about it and not being triggered in unsafety due to being left behind. So there's that huge thing to explore.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is like, okay, where do I fit in as an intuitive into the world that is not open to whatever I am, right?
Yeah.
Later I had a discussion with the other doctor, the one that spoke English. And I'm like, you need to go into intuitive medicine. He's like, oh no, I'm just an anesthesiologist. I'm like, yeah, I'm telling you, you need to go into intuitive medicine. I'm like, you're sitting here next to me. This is happening for a reason. This might not register right now, but you need to go into intuitive medicine.
Did he seem receptive to that?
I think he thought I was crazy.
But you talked to
I said that to his wife too.
Yeah.
And she's like, and so, because I was still saying this to this wife, because I thought, okay, she's a woman. She's more generalized of an MD than he is.
And
she has a newborn.
She's got the newborn. Otherwise, he's like, she would be back here too, except she has a baby right now.
Yeah. And so I'm telling her, I'm like, you need to go into intuitive medicine. I'm like, okay, I'm past the point where saying crazy shit matters to me. Because obviously, here's a doctor, the Spanish doctor, he's what it is. I'm like, but here's are two American young doctors, and they're on this flight, and they're having this experience. They're having this experience with me. They're having this experience where they're literally not able to diagnose. Because imagine what the psyche will register for them. I'm in an experience where I have trained, let's say, for 10 years to be a doctor, whatever doctor you happen to be in. And here I am on the airplane, not being able to meet and address a situation.
Right.
And save the guy's life.
Obviously, they're blaming it on lack of tools and lack of medicine. They're like, well, if I had a hospital's worth of EKGs and this and that, I would be able to know. And maybe that's true. Maybe if they hooked him up to an EKG, they'd be like, okay, this is not a heart attack. And they could take the blood sugar. They could go, okay, well, this is this or this is that. Let's say that's true. You just don't have that on a plane. You just don't have that if you run across someone, in the woods or on the side of the road or whatever. There are times when you just don't have advanced diagnostic tools.
Yeah.
If for no other reason than that, being able to intuitively decode these situations is valuable. I mean,
no, they said, because the flight crew was like, is he having a heart attack? Do you think he's having a heart attack? And both of the doctors are like, we cannot say for sure based on the equipment that we have here.
The symptom, they're like, the symptoms are in line with a heart attack, but those symptoms are in line with a whole bunch of other things that are not heart attacks.
Yeah.
So does it look like a heart attack? Yes, but it also looks like 50 other things that are not heart attacks.
Yeah. It's interesting because think about the dynamic nature of the situation. They're having a visceral experience as MDs I'm hoping they're having a visceral experience of the idea of what does this mean for me as a doctor. I hope they're not. To some extent, I can see how the other one was looking at, here's my time to shine. But at the same time, I don't want to make the wrong decision. So there's the ego part that is playing in there. Yeah. But in the long run.
With the young one?
With the young one, yeah.
I could tell that.
Yeah. But I'm hoping in the long run, based on what I say to him, as crazy as it sounds, will register and a nugget will deposit within itself to where the ego will fall away and go, what is actually the best for the patient? And how can I treat the patient the best? This is not my time to shine as a young doctor on the airplane. And how can I do it better next time? And so I think in the long run, I kind of let go of all inhibitions of coming across as crazy or not crazy. I'm like, okay, they have placed me here for the reason, right? I wanted to fly out on a Saturday or Sunday. We wanted to fly out on a different day. And it was just simply not an option based on the flights that were available. I'm like, I am on this flight for a reason. Right. They're Ukrainian for a reason. I'm interfering for a reason.
Not only that, our seat, we didn't sit in our assigned seats.
Yeah.
And we just sort of sat because it wasn't a full flight. We just had basically
2 rows,
two 3-seat rows that we just occupied because we're flying together. Otherwise, we would have been spread out a little bit.
Yeah.
Any number of these things if any number of these things didn't happen, we either wouldn't have been right there, right then, in front of him.
Yeah, no, the universe just brought all of us together, right? And I'm like, okay, well, what is my job out of this, I guess? Yeah. If I had to Jesus myself into a job. And I'm like, the job is I'm going to have to say some very uncomfortable things to people who do not want to hear anything about it.
Yeah.
And so I said some uncomfortable things to him that, probably at the time he was clueless about any of it. But I think it will deposit itself at the end.
I hope it at some point is like, I hope so.
Yeah, because I think
he doesn't get. He probably will never have the satisfaction is the wrong word of knowing what happened with this guy.
Well, no, he could call the hospital.
Oh, yeah?
If he's a doctor and he's curious enough,
maybe
you could say, hey, I was an emergency.
I was on the flight.
And that was the doctor there. I'm just trying to check up. Did you guys admit such and such guy? And then that would be just a normal thing to do.
Yeah. Is that a HIPAA violation?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe. Well, can you, as another AMD, call a hospital in another country and ask them, is there HIPAA in another country?
How do you prove that you're the guy? I don't know.
Well, you would know his name and his age.
Yeah, well, I can call up, any hospital. If I know someone's in a hospital, I can call up and go, hey, I'm such and such MD for
I don't know.
For Sally Jones, and I just want to make sure that she's okay. Can I get an update on her chart and everything?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe he'll never. Not. Yeah. No. Either way. I know what was, and
Yeah.
So yeah. So from the orchestrations of the universe, it was a strange situation to be in, and there's a lot of things that came out that I'm still obviously processing. But it's like,
I said that because if he knew what it was, and then he could connect, that crazy lady on the plane said cranberry juice, that actually would have helped in the moment. Then maybe that would help solidify your suggestion to go into intuitive medicine. That's why I kind of wish he did know what it was in the end.
Oh yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Just because he's a man of science. And as a man of science, some sort of empirical evidence like that would probably go a long way to help convince them just to be open to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. You know, from the other standpoint, you know, I don't want to get into like any private conversations based on the actual patient, but you know, even though like I'm talking about the situation from everyone else's standpoint who was involved in it, right? United with their lawsuits and the doctors with their egos and me with
your baggage.
The baggage of where like, do I belong in this situation? Do you know what I mean? Like, I think it's interesting that, what would be the term that is coming up? Like baptism into the world of, like it was like a baptism into the world of
baptism by fire.
Yeah, baptism by fire, but into a world where
you weren't convinced that you belong. You wanted to. I mean, here's direct evidence.
I know I can help.
Yeah,
but I don't know if it's my place to like. What is that? Is it just it's not as
trial by fire?
Well, no, it's baptism by fire. That is what they did to me. That's what the universe did. Is they baptized me by fire. But what I'm saying is the hesitation there lays not in self-esteem of my actions, but in the hesitation of how do we blend a very scientific and physical world and actions thereof, and we insert, in my case, myself, who's an intuitive healer, into.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
do you know what I mean?
It's
like they like literally crash me into that world of medical healing.
We society have this deference to medical professionals of what they have MD after their name. Obviously they know everything, and we just societally do that to these quote unquote experts in all fields, but especially in medicine, because I don't know the first thing about medicine. I think the heart's over here somewhere, and there's other stuff inside that's important. I don't know. But I do know that the system as it stands today, the institutionalized system, is broken and at the very least incomplete. And there is a giant gaping hole where intuitive medicine fits. But not everybody realizes that. Not everybody is ready to accept that.
Yeah. No, in this case, it was, there was two things that were so shocking. Nobody cared about him as a human being.
It did seem like that. It seemed that it was very removed from him as a human. The Spanish doctor seemed like he cared.
He cared. Yeah, he's the only one that had a heart in the whole thing.
Right. That it was how are you feeling? It was how, as opposed to what's wrong with you. That's a subtle difference.
Well, no, he had a heart in his approach to what can I do to get his human being, one, not to die, and two,
not to suffer.
Yeah. Right. Until we land. But everybody else did not have a heart.
Everybody else was, I don't want him to die on my watch, or, how can I look awesome in this situation? How can I have a great story to tell the bros when I get home? How can we avoid a lawsuit? It was all not about this human being here who is not in good shape.
Yeah.
Right.
And so the only thing I guess that was so shocking to me, that not only I came there to ease his pain and physical interpretation by lowering his heart rate, and then just removing this pressure that was going to his head, and then just in general, like circulating his system back into homeostasis, I guess is the term, but yeah, just treat him as a human being, like recognize him as a human being. Because nobody was, like, which is so shocking to me, that United only wanted to mitigate a lawsuit, and the American speaking doctor wanted to to shine. And, if anybody cared, it was the Spanish elderly gentleman and then me.
Yeah, it was really weird. There was like, there's like a trope that, the hospital thinks you're just a number, but it was like that. It was like, oh, he's just they're not even talking with him. They're kind of talking at him.
Yeah.
It was very sterile and removed and I mean, professional, but not in a good way.
No. It was very, there was no heart.
There was no heart.
There was no heart.
Yeah.
And I thought,
very, sterile.
And I thought, this probably speaks about the medical industry in general. And then, and then the people, the paramedics who came on board, and then also the fire department that came on board.
They were even worse.
Yeah, they were even worse. It was all like, just adrenaline rush.
Our job is to get this guy in this wheelchair and out, which is apparently a whole ordeal. I didn't realize how big of an ordeal that was, but
yeah. And so everyone's on the edge. Everyone's enjoying their adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
And it was super shocking to me that he was lost as a soul and a human being in the whole process. Now, I knew that he was going to be fine before I even touched him.
I remember you saying that.
And I was telling him that he was going to be fine. And I was the only one that was telling him that he was going to be fine.
The young doctor did say at one point, it's like, you're probably not having a heart attack. And either way, I don't think you're going to die on this flight.
No, he said some terrible shit.
I don't think you're going to die. It was, I don't think you're going to die. Pause. On this flight. And
no,
I'm like,
he said some very, very bad stuff. Like he has a lot of lessons to learn. I don't know. I'm hoping he's going to get something out of that. But yeah, no one treated him as a human being. And I was appalled by it. But I started the whole thing as like, what is happening to him as a human being? Like my intuitive healing started with the second I activated my energy and I started healing without even coming, being 2 seats away from him. What is happening? Like what is happening to him as a soul, as a spirit, as a human being? What is his personalized experience?
The nurse seemed to care.
I wasn't involved with the nurse was there. Yeah. Anyway. And so just not to bring in his personal struggles into that, but what all of us faced, so the whole United doctor and me team faced, was someone's decision at the threshold of an exit point, right? And you can do all kinds of medical stuff for that. Like you can do this and this and this and that, right? But on the depth, there's this very visceral experience of a soul choosing their life forward. Like it was, to me, before I even went to heal him physically, it was like, here's how a soul choosing his life forward looks like. And here's how a complete rewrite looks like. He's choosing a complete rewrite of his soul path. And so to me, that was such a profound experience to be there with someone who chose to stay and chose a rewrite, and how painful it was from the physical interpretation, how difficult it was to, for everyone around. And at the same time, how not difficult it was for everyone around. You know what I mean? It was just to see the inhumane experience of that treatment.
What's apparent is, everybody wants the guy to make it. Everybody is on the same page as far as that goes. Everybody wants the same outcome. Everybody wants this guy to be perfectly fine. We continue on our flight. That's the goal, right? Everybody has the same goal.
Yeah.
And yet everybody is powerless to do anything about it. And it's like, we've got two doctors, maybe 3 doctors and a nurse. We have an entire medical team here. And, the best they can do is fumble around because they don't have the tools. We got, flight attendants. And the one guy says this happens more. The flight attendant said this happens much more often than you would believe. Because I'm like, has this ever happened before? He's like, oh yeah, it happens all the time. And I'm like, really? He's like, all the time. And that's the first time it's ever, we fly a good bit, but that's the first time it's happened to us.
Yeah. Well, no, but even if it happens all the time, it was very apparent how United's goal was to mitigate a lawsuit. It's just like the fact that was the case.
Yeah, it did seem
it
like
makes me feel
they want to do everything they can, but they don't want to do. There's certain things that they don't want to do.
Well,
having the doctor give him the doctor's personal medicine, ooh, that is right out.
Well, no, they only did the things after the doctor who was advising them on the ground allowed them to do it.
Okay.
The nurse, the flight attendant who started administering all the medicine to him was the one who was basically deciding when that was going to happen based on the ground crew dictating her movements. So like they only gave him aspirin and they only gave him whatever the other thing was. Nitroglycerin after the flight, right. the control crew approved it at the ground.
Yeah. And to me, aspirin is like, I'd give aspirin to anybody. That's as far as, I don't know what nitroglycerin does other than apparently lower heart rate, but I wouldn't give that to somebody, but I would give aspirin to anybody. That's just something you can buy over the counter.
Yeah.
But,
yeah,
I guess I'm not United, afraid of a lawsuit.
No, that's what it is, right? They had to follow the protocol, not based on
what's best for the patient.
It's
like, what's best for the patient, asterisk, that doesn't get us sued.
Yeah.
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 That was apparent too. The dancing around, we want to help you, but we can't do that. So what else can we do?
Yeah. And everybody was just...
Eventually, I guess United has a reasonably well-stocked medical kit because they had, aspirin, but they had nitroglycerin and they had an IV bag and I assume needles to do it. And they had some sort of glucose checky finger prick thingy. And they had, I'm like, okay. They got all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. That was crazy. I mean, it was crazy. I mean, I'm still trying to figure out, the multitude of ways that this expresses itself. And I'm sure, it has ripple effects of all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe on the summaries, as you go through life, the universe will present itself with ample opportunities to get past certain personal blocks.
Yeah.
Or to highlight the personal blocks. And then I guess, in this case, or to highlight not the block, but like our behavior out of a pain body or out of some sort of trauma. And then why, how do we feel about it? Right. Because at the end of the day, when you go to bed, if you and I were flipping out about travel, like we don't feel great about it. Right.
Yeah.
And you feel like shit, subjecting your family. I hope you feel like shit subjecting your family to that. Just like I felt like shit subjecting the family to that. And, but having apologized about it 100 times over, doesn't seem like I'm doing anything about it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
It's funny because it's like, I'm aware, I'm hyper aware of it too. As it's happening, I'm like, look at this. We have more time than we have allotted for this. As far as the schedule goes, we're ahead of schedule. There's no reason to flip out. And yet here I am internally flipping out. I'm super aware of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, So yeah, maybe it advises put yourself into
it's
interesting situations.
It's not even like, oh, we're running late. It was never we're running late. It's like you're running late. Okay, maybe you now have an actual reason if you want to say that. Now there's a tangible reason. There was no tangible reason. We were ahead of schedule.
Well, the tangible reason is unprocessed pain body is spiking.
There's no, I'll call it a legitimate external reason. Like, oh, we are running, we hit unexpected traffic. We're running. There's no external thing to point to. It's all inside. Is what I meant by that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and same with this. In this guy's case, he initiated this experience of an exit point by going, right? Like you could say, oh, well, he's diabetic, and so he's having his blood sugar spike, and therefore this is the outcome of it. No, it was physical choices, one after another, that he was consciously or subconsciously progressing through that caused him to be in that moment at that time, facing possible death on the airplane.
With those people, with you, with...
universe just brought us together into the shared experience.
Sitting right there.
Yeah, right. And just like you and I, once again, having the stress point of shared experience of travel, and then bouncing that bullshit off of each other, which is like, that is not an experience I want to have, right? I would honestly, to some extent, I felt better about how I handled my intuitive healing of him. I feel better about that than how I handled us boarding a flight that we were not even late for. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so strange to say that being in two situations, I feel like I completely failed at something was so super trivial and rudimentary, such as getting to a flight and boarding it on time, and how I handled it for my entire family, versus literally
life and death,
a life and death situation, and I had to heal a human being, and guide him through his exit point.
Literal, the highest stakes kept you cool.
The higher stakes was fine, and then here's
something dumb and trivial.
I couldn't keep it together. But but that was 3 days before, and I spent a lot of time going, oh my gosh, look at the idiocy of me sinking down to the lowest point of my being, such as I feel unsafe somehow over what, right? It's so intangible, but yet it was so important. It was so overwhelming to where I couldn't even calm myself down for at least 2 hours.
I mean, the airport, travel in general, but the airport in particular, really can bring out the worst in people. We saw a lot of people losing it.
Yeah, there was children crying in that line that Tenerife had for the international thing.
Incredibly long line.
There were people who were cursing,
yelling at people.
There were possibly stampedes starting with that one guy yelling at their children. Other children are crying. Other people are just at the maximum level of stress because literally the flights are last called. It was, but that didn't bother me.
That didn't bother me.
But the just flight, a simple not getting there 30 minutes before, or an hour before, or an hour 30 minutes before was the end of the world.
Yeah.
So, and it seems like it's such an artificial implementation of when we choose to lose it.
Right.
Versus I could have chose to lose it when everybody was panicking, but I was this is fine. Or the 2-hour flight was fine.
I was look at this. Look at what humanity devolves into when you're put in this, densely packed line of bullshit.
Yeah.
And the people behind us were kind of flipping out.
Oh yeah, no, everybody was flipping
out in the most
British way.
Most British of ways.
That's so great.
And I almost suggested you should just push your way through and get to the front if you are this close. I almost suggested it, but I'm no, I'm just going to, whatever they want to do.
Is that the tendency with British? They're less likely to be
so. They're oh my
pushy?
gosh, our flight's leaving in 10 minutes, 5 minutes. And I'm I almost said.
No, they had a last call. They're that's the last call for our flight. And they were still behind us.
Yeah,
which was an hour away.
You guys should just push your way through if you were really that late.
And they ended up
doing it, but really, but 40 minutes after they should have.
Is that a cultural difference between British and Americans?
I think so. I think Americans are care a whole lot less about other people's feelings and opinions.
Well, no.
We were if
it was you and I, we would have been in that line an hour or two ago.
When we got to Newark, we're shoving our way through people. We're we're late. Can we get ahead of you, please?
Yeah. But
who's going to say no to that? And if they do, we just go back one. Can we get ahead of you, please?
Oh no, we go forward one.
Go forward. Yeah, there you go. And it works.
No,
and at the same time, I am happy to let anybody in that is genuinely in a pinch, especially if I'm not.
Well, no, you and I, after this medical detour, we were less than an hour away from our flight leaving.
We finally got our bag. We got through immigration. We got our bag, and we're going to, you have to get your bag, and then you have to give your bag right back. And the guy's like, 37 minutes, you're never going to make that. And we're like, yes, we are. Just put the bag on. And we just took off running, and we made it.
Yeah, we made it.
There was a bit of franticness about the run, but it's just like, you got to run because the time was nowhere near as tight as I thought it was. We could have walked and still made that flight, probably.
If we walked and we weren't in a hurry, each time we sped through the line would have delayed us by more than because everybody kept on letting us go forward and forward and forward. So that cumulatively forward gave us extra 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But it would have been less than 5 minutes if we just casually did that whole thing.
Yeah. Each interval would have ate up another 5 minutes, and then we would have missed it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there are plenty of times at the airport where we're perfectly fine and I see family running.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is just our turn. These really crazy family
I've been there.
Yeah. And I mean, to some extent, the kids like it because it's kind of like crazy.
And Aiden's fast, and he's not lugging stuff. And I'm like, I'll take your bag. You go. Tell him to hold the thing. We're coming.
Yeah. No,
and in the end, he's like, yeah, they're not even. He comes running back. He's like, they're not even boarding yet. And we're like, oh, okay, great.
Yeah. No, it was crazy.
He said that, and I'm like, is he sure? Am I sure he's at the right gate? Because by my calculations, we should be on there by now. Yeah, it was great.
No, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll do it better next time.
I sure hope so.
Thanks for listening.